Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm the artistic director of KALAKUNJ based in Reading. We set up in 2008 and has come a long way. This is our second Heritage Lottery Fund project, Krishna, the mythological hero. After the successful completion of our first project, The Story of Shiva, 2 years ago in 2015, we are now set to explore the philosophy of Lord Krishna, the superhero in the Hindu mythology. And as part of this project, we have been working for the past few months, visiting museums, the library, and then we have also made a visit to the heritage site, Bhakti Vedanta Manor. And today, finally, we are here to culminate the whole project through seminar, workshops, performances. We have a huge array of experts helping us today, and we hope to learn something as we go along about Krishna and his mystic image.
I think Krishna is a very real kind of figure, you know. It's not like he's a god. He's real. He's stealing butter. He's doing naughty things. You know, he's telling the Pandavas to do something which is not correct. But always there is a significance and a philosophy. So he's a very real person. But every time that reality also transcends into an eternal goal. And I love that kind of linkage and that philosophy, and that is the whole bhakti movement.
What we are teaching is the values of Krishna consciousness, the values of spirituality, the values of being the right person. That is the key. It takes years and years, not only years, lifetimes and lifetimes to study the scriptures thoroughly and understand what the scriptures are teaching us and how we are supposed to be the leaders of the world, how we are supposed to behave in the world, how we are supposed to behave with each other.
You know, even very, very erotic stories are there, you know, where Geet Govind is totally erotic. If you read each line, it's beautiful to even explore them. And they were written with so much of lasya and shringar. But again, it's very real. That's how you fall in love. That's how, you know, you are in love. And you're doing real things. But at the end of it, there is that bhakti element. And I find that very fascinating. You know, Meera loves him in a certain way. Radha loves him in a certain way. Satyabhama loves him in a very different way. You know, each of the characters around him also love him in a different way. And even the whole idea of love is explored in different ways. So it's very fascinating. I mean, you've picked a great subject.
Oh, thank you.
This deity who we see has been about the dance and the beauty of the music and pleasure and all the narratives of the cowherd. It is also about understanding the connections in our life between our sensual, amorous, loving, beautiful enjoyment of life and our quest for some tranquility and peace and happiness that will last rather than the passing of the day-to-day.
Krishna has been an enlightening figure in the history of Indian philosophy, starting from 4th century BC and then going forward became popularized through the Bhakti movement in the 10th century AD.
This has been an amazing learning journey for both the volunteers and for the project members and the students of KALAKUNJ. As a part of this project, we had different aspects to look at. We had a visit to the Victoria and Albert Museum in London and the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. We were amazed to see the collections of Krishna-related arts available in these museums for the general public to visit and learn about Krishna. We also had a visit to the Bhakti Vedanta Manor in Watford, where we saw a different side of Krishna, with Krishna as a philosopher. We had a volunteer from ISKCON who guided us through this manner and introduced us to the various philosophies of Krishna.
Visiting the museum, looking at what attracts audiences to the different aspects of Krishna here at the museums. So Krishna as a child, Krishna as an adolescent, with Radha and the flute. It's been wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you very much
for having us.
It's been a pleasure.
And answering our questions on the topic of Krishna.
You're very welcome.
We're very happy to be here. We just had a couple of questions on the various artifacts you've got in the museum. Could I start with the first one, which is what is the relevance of the various Krishna artifacts in the UK in the museum, and how have they been received by the public?
I think that Krishna is one of the most popular aspects of Hinduism. It is when we're trying to show our collections to the public and trying to tell people about the wonders of Indian art that we have here. Krishna is a very good way of connecting with people. So we do, and we saw many of the paintings which show the delightful aspects of Krishna in his youth, or as in his love with the Gopi Radha. And those popular subjects, I think, go down very well with the public. Krishna has usually been shown among other more general exhibitions on Hinduism, which have been happening in the UK certainly from the 1980s, 1982 onwards, or on exhibitions or displays of Indian art. But there was also one exhibition specifically about Krishna called Krishna the Divine Lover, which in 1997 toured around the UK, which was curated by Balraj Khanna, the artist, and which drew mainly on paintings from the Victoria and Albert Museum's collection. So that travelled around the UK.
Yeah. What was the first Krishna artifact acquired by the museum, and what was the history behind it?
Well, the first artifact acquired by this museum was in 1874, when this museum was actually called the South Kensington Museum, and there was a collection of artifacts which was sold to us by a man called William Taylor. And William Taylor had been the commissioner for Patna during the days of the British Empire, and then for various reasons he'd actually lost his job and come back to England and sold off his collection, and that included some bronze images of Krishna. So there's an image of the crawling infant Krishna, Bala Krishna, and there's an image of Krishna the flute player, small bronze images. Then later other sorts of artifacts started to come into the collection. But the reason why I have to hesitate before answering that question is because in 1879 the collections of what was called the India Museum, which had been set up by the East India Company in 1801, came into the V&A, and 19,000 objects came in. And among those, there were certainly Krishna artifacts, but we don't know exactly when they came into the India Museum. But what we do know is that there were some images which the India Museum bought, which were from the collection of Colin Mackenzie. And Colin Mackenzie was the first Surveyor General of India, which he became in 1815. And he was a man who had a great interest in Indian culture and art and religion and language. And he collected images of Krishna among many other sorts of images, which came into the Indian Museum. And his collection of sculptures came into the V&A in 1879.
There's so many artifacts
Yes,
here.
yes.
What do you think are the key differences between the various artifacts across geographic locations or time periods in terms of interpreting Krishna?
Yes, there are many differences. There are so many different schools and time periods. So, for example, you have early stone sculptures from Mathura showing narrative aspects of Krishna's life. Then you have bronzes, solid cast bronze images of Krishna from the south of India, from the Chola dynasty and Vijayanagar, for example. We have a wonderful image of Krishna trampling on the head of the serpent demon Kaliya Krishna. But as well as the sort of rather more formal approach that you get with large bronzes or stone sculptures, you have the much more intimate scale of small bronzes, like I mentioned, the Krishna as a baby, crawling, a nice little chubby baby, small bronzes, often from South India. And then you have the paintings where you have these wonderfully intimate depictions of Krishna made on a small scale, which you can look at very closely, designed particularly for a king and his court to be able to hold up close and look really at the details. And often they show these wonderfully playful aspects of Krishna's life, and often they have an element of humour in them. And the way that those are done varies so enormously from the different schools, whether they're in Rajasthan or in the Pahari, the hill region, and each of the individual courts and the groups of artists all had their own styles, so we can see big stylistic differences. And again, we looked at a Mughal painting of the Harivansha showing a scene of Krishna which was in a more sort of warlike aspect, so rather appropriate perhaps for a commission for an emperor, thinking about the grander themes of life. So many different types of depiction in different types of circumstance and different courts and times.
Is Krishna actually in the manner in the schools and in the theatre? Is he portrayed in any visual or performing arts around the manor, if there is any?
That's a beautiful question, because Krishna, what does Krishna mean? The all beautiful. So when you have the all beautiful persons anywhere, in any form, in any environment, he is considered to be an artist. He is considered to be a performer. Such an energetic, beautiful, exciting person that any organization like an artist group or a theatre group, if they want to learn something, they would have to learn from Krishna, because he's the most theatrical person ever.
If a dancer were to perform a dance on Krishna, what background knowledge would they need to know beforehand in order to enrich their performance?
If you think of a little 5 or 6 year old maybe dressed up and with a feather and playing the part of Krishna, maybe they won't really understand very much except the playful element of Krishna. But as they grow older, it might be more important to have a bit of background. So I think all knowledge is useful. It's probably quite good to have some kind of understanding. It may be a very practical, devotional understanding, or it could be a more intellectual, theoretical understanding, but both could enhance.
So how do you feel all the learnings from this Krishna project will impact the way you learn Bharatanatyam from now on?
Well, it's shown me that people have so many different point of views whilst having the same roots and core learning. And that's allowed me to advance my thinking as a dancer. It's allowed me to see everything in different point of views. And hopefully that should help me through my career.
As a parent of KALAKUNJ dancer, how has your experience been today?
It was very interesting and very exciting actually. It has given more, I thought because I have 2 children and they are coming to KALAKUNJ from past 7 years, and they got a lot of exposure towards our culture, and Krishna being one of the major part of it. They learned a lot of things, and they heard from the people here as well, and it must have really inspired them and encouraged them to learn more.
Can you name one key thing that you would take away from today?
From today I would take away that Bharatanatyam and other types of Indian dance is not only learnt by people from India, it's learnt by people all over the world, and I find it amazing how a dance from India has impacted and influenced people from all over the world. And that's very nice. That's very nice to hear, and I will definitely take that away today.
So in what way to what extent do you think the learnings from today and this project about Krishna will help you to support your child in their dancing and appreciate the heritage?
Children learn through experience, through looking, visualizing things. So when they see and learn from other people teaching them, and when they see videos of somebody else doing the performance with from other culture and other languages, they learn better, which along with the friends and peers, that will keep them remembered better than what as a parents we teach them. They learn verbally from us, but when they see the performances and when they do by themselves, that stays with them for longer.
தீபமே அருள்தாராய் சாரசதள விலோச்சன பரம பாமர சாமஜ வரத மதுரை மலர் பூல தீபமே அருள்தாராய் சரி சரி சமபனி சனி ரபமகரி சரி மக பபனி மபனி சமபனி காய பூல தீபமே அருள்தாராய் தருணம் இது நினைந்து நினைதுளம் மனந்து கனிதருள் விரந்து ஆய பூல தீபமே அருள்தாராய் சாசம் கரி சனி ரே சனி த பாபா தீமபனி கமபதி சாசா கரி சனி ரே சனி த பாபா தீமபனி கமபதி சதி சதி சனி பனி சனி பதி பமபனி பம பகமபனி மபனி பனி சதா பம கம பத பமகரி கமனி கம பக பப பசதி ச மக மகரி சரி சனி த பத பமகரி சமக தீபமே அருள்தாராய் பாராய் புன்னகையுடு மறியில் வாராய் மனமிறங்கி என்னை பறிவுடனே எனதுயிருடனும் என்று அன்று கலந்தே என்னை என்று மறந்தா பனி நிலாவதவலி குயிலுரா கிழிவிகளும் பார முகமும் ககுமும் மனம் சிலரும் பாய பூல தீபமே அருள்தாராய் ஆய பூல தீபமே.
The reason I came here this morning is because I saw from the event handbook of the university, and I say it's about someone, Krishna, in Indian literature and traditional dance music. This is something I want to learn because it's very new to me. Yeah. That is why I came here. I think it will help me to learn something about a very important country, actually neighboring country of China. Yeah. The second most populous country in the world. Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice.
Surely it will benefit my knowledge.
Hello, welcome Arunima to our KALAKUNJ HLF project, Krishna, the mythological hero, and we are delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Ananya, for putting it together.
Kuchipudi originated in a village in Krishna district of Andhra Pradesh and was also linked to the Vaishnavite tradition. To what extent is Krishna related to the evolution of the dance style, Kuchipudi? Or in other words, does the Kuchipudi repertoire include a lot of Krishna-related items, and do you perform them often, or are you very exclusive?
Sure. So yes, definitely there was a huge influence of the Vaishnavite philosophy on Kuchipudi. It is by the Krishna river in the Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh, and the village itself is called Kuchipudi, where male Brahmins till today practice and teach Kuchipudi. In fact, it was a tradition that every family would give one, member, one male member to Kuchipudi, so that he would propagate the dance form for the future generations. And till today, that is happening. So yes, there was a lot of influence. It started by being a Bhagavata Mela tradition, where groups of male Brahmins used to tell Krishna stories through dance drama. And they would travel from village to village telling these stories, and the whole purpose was not entertainment, it was to propagate the whole philosophy of bhakti. So it was extremely influenced by the bhakti movement, and a lot of the original repertoire consists of a lot of Krishna Leelas and the Krishna stories, because it was more about the union of the Atma with the Paramatma, which basically is the human with the eternal. So it was not just at a superficial human level, and it was more to tell the villagers on like leave your ego behind. So it was a very, I would say, progressive kind of repertoire and dance theatre tradition that existed. And then of course slowly it kind of moved into becoming a whole repertoire. Siddhendra Yogi, who's a great poet and who had a huge influence on Kuchipudi, wrote the great epic poem Bhama Kalapam, and I will be performing a part of that again, which kind of signifies the whole union with that eternal force and that eternal kind of love, which is not at a superficial level, where you leave your ego, your material desires, everything behind, and you just love unconditionally with no real desire. So there is a huge influence, there is a huge repertoire that exists, which kind of involves Krishna, and I will be performing some of that traditional repertoire. And it was really fascinating for me to go through this journey of rediscovering some of that old material. And I could not really find singers to be able to sing that, but there's just such vast repertoire that exists, because there's so much Telugu poetry and Sanskrit poetry that exists from that era. So I do perform a lot of the Krishna items. I do have a lot of the original repertoire, but yes, I'm actually rediscovering them for this festival.
just know Krishna as in various forms, like, Krishna as a mischievous child, and then Krishna as a lover, and then Krishna as a war, as a diplomat, and then there's Krishna as a divine entity. So which aspect or which form of Krishna is predominant when in Kuchipudi style of dancing?
As I said, most of the stories also involve the entire kind of story from him being a baby boy to having different roles.
Okay.
And as I said, because of the Bhagavad Mela tradition, every time a new story was picked, but it always had a theme behind it. Right. So for example, we also have Krishna Leela Tarangams, which were written by the great poet Narayana Tirtha, and all of these kind of songs speak about the stories from his childhood to kind of adulthood. Okay. And the entire, even when we dance on a plate, which is a hallmark of Kuchipudi repertoire, the whole purpose is bhakti, which basically means that you are the brass plate itself is like being grounded to this world, and you are taking your responsibilities. When the dancer is dancing, it's almost like signifying you're taking your responsibilities, but you have a purpose, and that purpose is to just devote yourself to the divine.
Okay.
So carry on your goals and don't think about the end result, which is constantly repeated, whether it's Gita, whether it is the Geet Govind, where the love is again divine. It's always about the union with the divine. So the stories are kind of maybe having fun elements where he's stealing butter, where he's where the mother sees the world in his mouth, all of those, but it's always with the purpose of bhakti.
So is there any particular piece in Gita Govinda which you absolutely love performing time after time? So
yeah, I mean, I love all of them, but I think I love Sakhi Keshi a lot, because as I said, the Abhisarika Naika, she's fascinating, where she gets a small letter where he's invited her to meet him in the dark, in the forest, and she leaves everything and goes dressed up, even dresses up in a dark color so she kind of can go and see him. She has so many obstacles where there are snakes and thunder, but the love is so strong, and that the passion that she goes to meet him, and then how beautifully the poet has weaved that in, Jayadev, how he has just weaved all of that in. I mean, I find it really beautiful on how at different layers you can explore just one line. Nivrita Nikunja, Gatam Gataya Nishi. Just in that one line you can paint the whole story. And you spoke about paintings, and if you see those paintings, so beautifully they bring out, especially the miniatures, bring out every element.
So, enter Krishna. I'm living in Birmingham. I've studied Bharatanatyam a little bit each week for about a year and a bit. And the suggestion is, should we go to the Hare Krishna festival in North Birmingham? But that's what started me thinking about how Krishna has appeared in my life as a dancer. And so when I do my scholarly work, what I'm trying to do is explain how, in my own experience, what's happened to my body has also become a way of learning and understanding. And all of you who dance know that you're sweating and your feet hurt, but the audience are watching beautiful images. So it's about that journey and that connection between our bodies and what we communicate. And there's a great guy, a scholar called Kerry Skora, and he writes about a Kashmiri manuscript, Abhinavagupta. And it's very complicated reading, but the beautiful idea is that all the most complex images in Hindu scripture and teaching can only be understood through our bodies. They mean nothing if we can't realize them somehow through ourselves. And that all our awareness of life is physical. And that sounds quite radical and mystical, but of course a lot of modern philosophy and science is concluding that everything we think is through our body, so every thought is visceral.
how much of Krishna's theme appears in your presentation? In the sense, is it unique or is it similar to the other genres?
For me, it's got quite a prominent position. I started training in Indian classical singing, North Indian classical singing from a very young age, and a lot of the compositions have Krishna as one of the main themes in the songs. And there are also devotional songs that we learn as a student to Krishna also, along with the other deities also, but Krishna is definitely a kind of a strong theme. And now as a singer I mix a lot of different musical styles together, and I find that Krishna is still there.
Since you've incorporated Odissi dance style in your presentation, can you inform us about the influence of Krishna in the evolution of Odissi?
Yeah, so from the study I have done, I'm not an expert in Odissi music. The reason also why that is because there's not a lot of written information. It's a vocal tradition that's passed on through generations. So it was heavily influenced by with the theme of Krishna because of the Bhakti movement and the Vaishnava movement, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu passing on this message of Krishna's love and of chanting and using mantras to still the mind and to calm the body and to connect in a very simple way through this Mahamantra. So that was one way that it came into kind of the Krishna's message came into the communities at that time. And also another reason that I recently learnt about is that Krishna and the temples in Puri and in Orissa are very they have a strong presence, and so that also affected the music. And also the worship of Krishna and the devotion to Krishna was seen as something that was very relevant to the society that we live in now, or even at that time. And sort of the worship of other deities was sometimes misunderstood. The worship of Krishna was something that was seen as very just, it was very fair, it was something where his message appealed to the masses, and so that also has shaped how a lot of the music at that time was created. And also a lot of the dance gurus of that time either learnt from sages who were hugely devoted to Krishna, so then that affected the dances that they would choreograph as well.
My name is Deepa Satagopan. I am a student of KALAKUNJ and a volunteer on this project, the Krishna Mythological Hero. It's been a very knowledgeable experience, learning new things along the way, learning facts I've never known about before. I think more than anything, it has been a wholesome experience. Not just learning aspects about Krishna, but also how that can be interpreted through dance. Because we've been doing this project, we've been focusing on a lot of storytelling of Krishna's life story, about his depicting him basically through the dances as well, which has been brilliant because I've not learned to dance about Krishna before, but we've been focusing on that, so doing that side of things, visiting the museum, looking at what attracts audiences to the different aspects of Krishna here at the museums. So there's so many different topics within this topic that has been really amazing.
Krishna has become quite prevalent within British culture. How was Krishna first introduced into the Western world, and why has he, rather than other Indian gods, become so prominent?
Well, I suspect some people might dispute that Krishna is the most popular. Difficult to know how. Of course, you'd have to go back into history and histories of religion to really know the detail of that. But obviously one of the big aspects is the rise of ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or Hare Krishna as people have known it. And many, many Westerners had, over the years, have joined that in America and Britain particularly. In fact, I think many of the monks, as we might call them, are American, some of them with a Jewish background, so it's quite an interesting kind of mix of religious backgrounds. And also the Beatles made Hare Krishna very popular in the 60s. So I think there's a kind of popular culture aspect to it. But also maybe because Krishna is depicted as such a lovable, playful, loving figure, and I think that's very attractive.
How does the Bhaktivedanta manner contribute to the Krishna heritage in the UK specifically?
This is the biggest temple of Hare Krishna in UK. It's got the facility to look after the needs of the community, to look after the needs of the wider community as well, not just Hare Krishna community, but wider community. So we got these facilities and we got the programs in place to educate the people, as I said, according to the scripture of how to look after the world.
So how much do you think is Krishna's philosophy relevant in contemporary times, given the uncertainties that we face in today's world? So how can we contemporize Krishna?
I think he is very contemporary right from the beginning. Right from the beginning, he's been a contemporary, as I said, a real figure, and it's not just something which is steeped in philosophy or mythology, actually. It's something very real, and I think that's why we can relate to him, and in so many different ways. And any story you pick, I think it's very contemporary because it has a text, but it also has a subtext. And the relevance is of the subtext. What is hidden? What is the poet trying to say between the lines?
How do you think how much of Krishna's philosophy is relevant in today's world, both in music and in the real world?
So I think Krishna is definitely relevant in both music and in life, and I find that music generally reflects life, so I think they're both the same. And I think with the kind of world that we're currently living in, I think having philosophies that help us live life and how to understand what's going on in the world definitely helps. I found it interesting through the research I did that King Akbar in the 16th century studied the Mahabharata and asked his kingdom to read the Mahabharata and got it translated into Persian because there were so many cultures and influences moving together, and he felt that it would be helpful for the people to understand the teachings of Krishna. And I think with the world that we live in now, with current leaders around the world creating a lot of conflict, and also on the flip side a lot of people are coming together through that, I think the teachings of Krishna are very relevant, and also understanding his stance of understanding that we live in the Kali Yuga now, which is the time of ignorance, but it's also a time that we can connect to our inner selves and to the divine within ourselves the quickest in some ways. And so to be able to see the world for its heaviness, but be also to be able to kind of see it from a different perspective, I think is very relevant now.
Thank you to Heritage Lottery Fund for once again funding us, and we will definitely come back again with new ideas. Thank you very much.